Well, hello there, everyone. Here to show you the difference between grants and loans is basically that I'm sure most of us, who are students, or if it's going to be like working, at some job task or something like that. If it's going to be an auto loan, or maybe if it's going to be mortgage payments or something like that. But on your hand, note about right here is talking about is like for most of the time that if we're going to be students, or if it's just going to be an actual auto loan or something like that. But if we're going to be getting a loan, or if it's going to be any type of any other type of source of income, but basically taxes, paying our taxes as well. But the whole purpose about this activity right here is basically talking about is like you have right here, or like which is like between a boy and a girl. It could be a man and woman, like these two. Say if you call them, I can maybe also pick them as like so far if they're mates or something like that. I'm like that they're just it's like a man and woman that are able to work out situations, that type of it's like classmates. And this right here will be an example right here of me, and like said before, and as well as if I had like somebody maybe a few other students as well, a few other ladies and gentlemen, of course, in the classroom, but working out to where that I'm like that anybody say that that we may think that if you think that you're the only one who has student loan payments or something like that, or other types of loan payments as well. But I guess the best way of knowing about it is like, of course, about how to manage it. I was thinking about like this activity right here, basically talking about with math, and I'm sure most students would probably say that whenever they were young, that they were like, well, math was not my favorite subject, etc., etc. Yeah, it was too complicated, especially long division. And if any students will ever wonder, I'm like, that why is it that long division was so complicated? And because I could say that, I'm like, I learned it at least maybe 7 times until I got the hang of it, and then after maybe a few times that learned something else, and a lot of times it just seems like anything that new, any new task that more likely that you do, and some students that may say, that well, the teacher was pretty good, or whoever that was giving you the lessons was pretty good, but then, more likely that, after that session, you say, was over with, after that class was over with, and then it's like, okay, well, how do you come up with the remainder number, etc., etc. But on your hand, knowing about, I'm like, the whole basic problems about with long division, I'm like long division, if that has anything to do with borrowing, $22,989, but I would probably say that, in some ways, it's like, if you were to divide that by like, it's like divide that maybe in a separate group, like such as that all together, for what was borrowed, and then let's just say that if you want to go ahead and come up with about maybe 7,000, 7,000 a year per, knowing about, I'm like, especially for any students who will be maybe collecting financial aid, is that knowing that I'm like, I even thought about this at which I know that they even have it to where that they want you to read your forms, and I'm sure that anybody say that but most of the time, if it's going to be a job application, financial aid application, whichever it is, and just think about really that no students is most students or employees, if it's going to be parents, it's like if you're going to be going to school, or if it's going to be working a job, is just thinking about, I'm like, you have times off in between to where if you want to take a break or vacation, if it's what you call it, like the fall break or the spring break or something like that. But then on your hand, knowing about, I'm like, really, about for paying back the loans, is that that's something that more likely that some students to say that, well, some of them, not all of them, are going to be like, well, I'll pay it back in the next year. Next year's tax return, I'll go ahead and pay it back by next year's tax return. But some ways that some that may say that, well, let's just say that you had 90 days, to start making. You got 90 days to come up with at least $700, from your student loan payments. So. And they may say that really it's not worth it having a nervous breakdown over it, but on your hand at knowing about, I'm like, if we're going to have student loans. And one thing, of course, I could say anybody here, maybe believe it or not, that with my art skills, this is like just which I don't know if I call it a secret or not, but this is like what I usually put it as, is that, if I'm going to be working the math problems, is that the way I use, I use my artwork as an example, to where if I want to go ahead and write down a number like, number 5, it's like, or maybe 10, I'm like, I'll go ahead and use right here as 10 as an example, and I go ahead and write, do something artistic, such as maybe write, number 10 right here. And if we all know that, like, for 10 and 10, I'm like, if you multiply that and then, multiply that, or if you, add that up with maybe about 20%, it's like if you, a lot of times nowadays you say with most students that, if you, after you graduate, that a lot of times it's like the whole purpose about, if it, besides calculus and basic math, after you graduate, then a lot of times that they say, you got to pay back your student loan. Oh, well, I'm not looking forward to that. But then by the time you get a job, and then you start to, you start making more money than what you were making before. And I'm talking about a month. Let's just say a month that 10. Let's just say if you get a job that paid about maybe $10 an hour, a month. That, let's just say that you're, if somebody will be making about $875, a month, maybe about $1,100 at the most. So I'll just go ahead and pick like $875 a month, and a lot of times that they usually say that, well, with taxes, it's especially whenever they take taxes out of your check, that each time that we may wonder that, I'm like, really, that any student or any full-time and part-time employee, why should they have to pay taxes? And in a lot of ways, the way I'll think about it, though, is that some that may do the research to where that way, I don't have any student loan payments, and then there's a gross amount coming out of my check, and then that gross amount could be about 20%, such as that if anybody say that if you, on average, if you make about $22,989.74 a year from whenever you were working, that more likely that it's possible that maybe $1,572 or so dollars could be coming out of your check from that full year from while you were working. This is how much that was coming out of your check. And some that may say that, I guess, I don't know what the rules are for the tax rates, but on your hand, and knowing about right here is you have right here is the dollar, and then right here will be right here is the account, knowing about like for $150,999 or so dollars, and that more likely say from borrowed money, and as well as a job, that if for when we graduate, that a lot of times that they say that, I'm like, yeah, that if we would think about, I'm like, really, that according for what I would probably say, like with most students, that being a student is a lot more than just being there in class and an understanding about it's like for what all the responsibilities are, such as if you have to provide the books, and you have to do the studying, and then as well as you got to turn in your assignment, or you do the work on time, that type of stuff. A number of responsibilities to where that a lot of times that anybody say that really that hey, I would if they had a choice, like if they would rather be a student, or I would rather work for the state or for the government. I would like to have my own office, and I would like to be able to have my own computer and my own workspace, etc., etc. But there are some jobs that more likely that there may be only one task that more likely that could work by the way of by the student, to where that I'm like, yeah, that the way of the student, to where that I'm like that, yeah, that with the way that they want to do the job is that they take their part for whatever that they want to do, as well as knowing about, I'm like, yeah, that for you work hard during the day, and then all of a sudden it's like you wind up go ahead and you get paid a check for about maybe $780, and oh yeah, like you got enough to go ahead and buy a cute looking outfit or something like that, and like, well, it don't work on it, you got to pay back your loans, etc., etc. But on the hand that knowing about, I'm like, yeah, that there are maybe some things about the job that more likely that most students and employees, full-time or part-time, that they would maybe enjoy, such as that I'm like, yeah, you don't like getting up early in the morning, but then you maybe you like the good looking view, you like the view from the outside or something like that, or you enjoyed learning about what you're doing on the job, such as that you met somebody that you were able to get along with, and then you like working with the staff, and then you like using the computer products and stuff like that. You at their offices, at the company or business that you like work with this or that. So in a lot of ways, that there may be some things that maybe anybody would maybe find that they like or they don't like about maybe a job, or if it's anything to do with hard working skills. So in a lot of ways, that knowing about for like a difference between grants and loans is that knowing about that with grants, that I'm sure that any student, and I can advise any student that the difference between grants and loans, that it's money, but it's not money necessarily paid back to you. And some students that may wonder that I'm like, really, that then if it's not money paid back to me, then why is it coming back to me? It's if you get a letter from financial aid, and then it's like, hey, that you're supposed to be getting money back, but then it's like, well, we got to make it clear that that's money to go ahead and pay back for the loans, or if it's for the cost of the books, or if it's anything that such as anything else that's related to like that your next job in the next 2 years from now, it's going to require a deposit. Like, wait a minute, I don't expect, I was not aware of no deposit or anything like that. I was not aware of any fees or anything like that. So in a lot of ways that we probably say about, I'm like, the future, there may be some that may say, well, we're not looking forward to it, because on the hand that we got, bills on top of bills and all this other, debt that it's like, really, that, I'm about to have nervous breakdown knowing about it. I'm like, the bills just keep adding up. So in a lot of ways that I kind of, the only reason maybe I may be looking forward to is knowing about, I'm like, really, just kind of looking forward to the experience. But on the hand that knowing about, I'm like, really, is I can also, say to everybody here is like, take it one thing at a time. You take take one thing one at a time. Take it one, it's like some may say take it one step at a time, but take one at a time. To where this is not something that's going to happen within that, unless they say, I'm like, but by next week that, you got to come up with $500 some dollars, and then to pay this back, and then pay back your loan, that type of stuff. But on the hand, that way I would think about, though, I think in a lot of ways that besides having to worry about, with most students having to worry about paying back their loans, and I really think that knowing about really that it's all about as well as for knowledge, to where how hard are we willing to work to we're paying our bills back, and any money that we may borrowed from the past is just thinking about, I'm like, really, that and then they may say that there may be what you call some type of forgiveness, such as that you borrowed $2,000 from back about 3 years ago, and it was forgiven. And what was that reason why it was forgiven? Was because that, Micah, you've been on time with your payments. You last month that you paid $250 or so dollars, and then that last week that you paid an additional $150. So in a lot of ways, that knowing about, I guess, the way I would think about it, I don't know if anybody would really believe it or not. It's like anybody can maybe believe what they want, but the way I would think about it, though, is that if we're on top of our payments, no matter if it's going to be maybe $150 or maybe $200 or maybe $500 or so dollars, that more likely that the chances are that we may not have to pay back everything that we borrowed, or if we do, that more likely that knowing about, I'm like, really, that it's all about the fact about testing for how much we're willing to take responsibility to we're paying back what we borrowed, and taking care of important tests, such as that we borrow so much money just to go to school, and then by the time we get a job, and then we make about maybe 18 months or so, we make about maybe 22 months of payments, and then they say that, you got a letter, and now they're saying that you don't have to pay back that whole amount. And like, well, that must be a mistake, because that I borrowed more than what was said on the bill. But so in a lot of ways, that some students, well, I say that, I can tell anybody here that, the TV that keeps anybody entertained, such as, how to work some, but a lot of times I could probably say that, my artwork, a lot of times it keeps me entertained, such as if I were to work my math problems here, and let's just say the math problem right here will be like, for the taxes and, the allowance and earnings, and like, for $47,873, and then, if you were to pay 20%, for that, and, do, the math, the math figuring, but, if we were to keep this in mind and knowing about, like, really, a lot of times, any amount of money that we're getting back on our taxes and how much we make in our allowance, if it's like $10.99, maybe a week, and multiply that times 789, 74, out of a year, and as well as, how much money that we make per year on a job, just thinking about, really, that, that amount of money more likely could be paid back a little bit faster than what we think. So, if it's going to be medical bills, and then just knowing about them, like, really, any student would probably say that, if we were to actually do the math and thinking about them, like, that it's really, I guess you'd say, it's really not all that bad. It's really not all that bad, for how we pay back our loan payments, because on the other hand, that knowing about, I'm like, that some students, that they say that a lot of times, if just because you get a check for a certain amount of money, that that don't mean, oh yeah, you can go out and buy a big screen TV or something like that, but on the other hand, you go out and make a car payment, etc., etc. But in a lot of ways, anybody say from how hard that maybe I've been working along with maybe everybody else, if you're full-time or part-time, will probably say that, hey, that I deserve a paycheck, but on the other hand, they may say, yeah, well, if you go out and get a job, and with this job here, that if it pays, on average, let's just say if it pays about, $20,000 a year, so it's like, they may say that, for on average though, that 20,000, so say that's per year, so on average that, so about 20,000 a year, and nowadays it seems like $2 million is considered what you call rich. I'm like, that that's a lot of money there, but if it's only only $20,000 a year, that's not much. Anybody say that you need to start making more than that. I'm like, but then on your hand, at knowing about, I'm like, really, for how I guess the whole question of matter is like, and how is more money going to come in once that for how much money that was borrowed, and then maybe for like a settlement or anything like that. But in a lot of ways, the way I would think about it though is like, the difference between grants and loans is that basically that it's like, grants are basically money paid back to you, is that for like for if it's like which for great success, is that for any student, if you pass your classes and make your payments, and more likely any student that may wonder that, I'm like, that you're so used to making payments to where that any amount of money that you're like saying that yep, you didn't save it, that you used it to pay back your loans, but one of these days that they may say that, I'm like, well, you're all paid up, you don't owe the government, or you don't owe the state, you don't owe the federal financial aid any more money. You're all paid up. It's that you had that you only had 38 months to pay up what you borrowed, and you already paid up what you borrowed. So that money's coming back. So in a lot of ways, that anybody say that, the whole purpose about the job is to where, by the time we get used to it, it just seems like it's nonstop to where and anybody say that, I'm like, that the difference between having a nervous breakdown from all the bills that you have to pay, and then plus from, it's like, whenever you turn in, the final payment, and then some that may say that, hey, that with that final payment, more likely that, I'm like, well, wait a minute, my job is to log on to to the internet site, and my job is, of course, is to go ahead and be making payments on, if it's the student loans, or if it's maybe anything that's after I file my taxes. My job is to go ahead and call the number and make a payment, and then more likely they say that you're all paid up, mister, you're all paid up, ma'am or sir, and like you don't owe the federal financial aid any more money. It's like, you know, yeah, 2 years after you graduated, and it may say on the form that like it's going to maybe take up to 5 years to pay this off, and then you know, pay it all up, and then after maybe 2 years that they say that, oh no, you know, you're all paid up. And if we were thinking about it, you know, if we did the math right, is that, you know, for anybody that's maybe wondering that that, you know, if something that does get paid up a little bit sooner, and just thinking about, I'm like, really, that I've done the math and I know how much I borrowed, but on your hand, that there may be a possibility. It's not maybe a promise, but there may be a possibility that it's possible that that they may say that, I'm like, you may not have to pay back that whole amount, or it was already paid for, since it's like you go out and get a job, and for, you know, if we would actually do our homework, etc., etc. But just knowing about, I'm like, any student that may wonder that, I'm like, yeah, just because if we get a check in the mail, you know, for any amount of money, you know, such as if it's going to be between, you know, maybe $3,000 or maybe $2,578 or so dollars, that they say that, you know, yeah, you can cash that, or you can go ahead and deposit that, like, if, you know, depend on what they tell you also. But then on your hand, that they may say that, you know, that's not money that you can go out and spend it on something for fun. You know, don't go to the movies. And, you know, it's like they said, unless if you're given permission, like they say that, yeah, that, you know, any amount of money that more likely that you do get, it's like, you know, just like maybe like a tax return. But they probably say that, you know, yeah, well, that, you know, you can't go out, don't be in, you know, that don't, they usually say that don't get too carried away and go out and buy a new car with it or nothing like that. You know, you got to go ahead and, if, you know, use it, they would suggest, you know, use it to pay back your student loans. So that some students, I'm sure, are waiting for that, to where they're waiting for a paycheck. they're waiting for, I can go ahead and maybe draw an example right here of using a pen right here, but they're probably waiting for like a paycheck. And I don't blame anyone that some students are probably wondering that. I'm like, yeah, well, where's that? They're probably waiting for a check for at least, you know, $5,872 or so dollars. So let's just say, you know, use this right here as an example right here of a check, and if you get a check like this in the mail, and just thinking about, I'm like, paid to the order of. So it's like, you know, yeah, that we may wonder that, I'm like, really, from how hard we've been working, that knowing about, I'm like, really, that you know, yeah, that, you know, I haven't, you know, if anybody has ever won the lottery or something like that, but let's just say on average though, that they probably say that, I'm like, really, that you know, you're so used to paying bills to where half the time you don't know what's considered, you know, between yours, mine, and ours, or something like that, or if it's going to be anything such as, it's like that, yeah, that for, you know, anything that's related to the fact about, I'm like, yeah, that, you know, as soon as you get money coming in, that you know, it's like hard getting used to, you know, after you've done a job for quite a while, after you do the important tasks, that a lot of times you say that, you know, knowing about, I'm like, really, that you know, you're not supposed to be making a payment. You know, you're already paid for, or you've already mailed your payments due to the financial aid. You know, that money goes to you. You know, that's your money. And like, really? I've been doing this so long to where I don't even know really what's considered my money, because on your hand, and I'm just, you know, used to doing it, to where every time I get, you know, any amount of money that I have to, you know, contact, you know, if it's going to be the loan company or something like that, or you're working out the math and that type of stuff. So in a lot of ways, that knowing about, I'm like, really, that coming to question to where how far we're willing to come along to where paying back what we borrow, you know, come along to where finding a job, and then completing the courses, you know, getting a great education. And the way I would think about though is, you know, some students like say that I'm like, really, that you just like kind of get, you know, prepared, is that knowing about, I'm like, really, just to think about it, and I'm sure it would all go fine, such as between grants and loans, is knowing about, I'm like, I'm sure that anybody probably say that, yeah, well, grants are usually money paid back to you, but then on your hand, that I'm like, yeah, one of these days that that grant money, more likely that some that we may have heard this before, to where it's just paper, you know. It's just paper, you know. There ain't nothing about special about it, you know. It's just paper, you know. That with this paper that more likely it's just paper. I can burn it. No big deal. It's like it's only $1. I'm like, but the way I would think about it, though, is really is money really made out of paper? Is money really made out of paper, or is it all made out of what you call the type of material to where that the amount of earnings? It's like the amount of for the if it's like what you say is like the type of design. It's like for the the amount you'd say for the treasuries for for how it was made. And the way I would think about it, though, is that with any amount of money that more likely that we think that is just paper. But then on the other hand, I'm like, well, what do you call it to where on a card? The card is not made out of paper, so it's like, well, it's made out of plastic. Well, it may not even be made out of plastic. Made out of what you call digital microchips. There's microchips inside of a card that more likely that goes through the swipe, goes through the system, and it's like it's able to read for how much is on the card, etc., etc. But anyway, I haven't done all my studies, of course, about how that works. But anyway, talking about right here is like the difference between grants and loans is basically that like according to my understanding, that they usually say with most students, and they say that please do not confuse this from grants, because knowing about just because anybody probably say that that whole purpose about being an adult is that that you're a student and knowing about like really for responsibility. And this reminds me a lot, like I may have mentioned before, about whenever I was young, that I can remember that the teachers and whoever at the school that they wanted me to hand my parents a form from the school about is he allowed to go on this field trip? We're going to be eating something during this class. We're going to be trying out different recipes, etc., etc. So in a lot of ways, that knowing about like really with the students though, and then as well as like with the teachers and staff, that knowing about for like the type of communication. But the whole purpose about like anybody say that if you're going to be a student, a lot of times that you're probably thinking about like whenever you started, that they telling you all kinds of stuff and you don't understand it, then one of those could be about what are grants, what are loans, and then so far what are what you call academic achievements or something like that, or if what is the long and pin page or something like that. So that we may say that I'm like, we may learn by our mistakes, but then on your hand, that knowing about I'm like really that from our experiences, knowing about I'm like really that for how well we are willing to manage for like if anybody say that if you want to go ahead and manage it to where that that this will be the job for about maybe 39 months, manager, and I'll go ahead and probably right here as a job. A job for 39 months. I'll go ahead and use right here 39 months as an example. A job for 39 months. And a lot of times I'm like for 39 months seems like a long time to a lot of us. 39 months. 39 months, that's about 4 years, something like that. 39 months, but on your hand, about 3.5, 4 years, but. Anyway, but on your hand, at knowing about like for 39 months, it's like how well you're able to handle all that about your money coming in the pocket, how much money that's going out to pay a bill, etc., etc. But then on your end, and knowing about like that 39 months, if you get busy enough and then maybe enjoy a little bit about your experience, I'm sure anybody probably say that you're getting used to it to the point where whenever it starts, and knowing about like more likely it'll go by fast, and then before you know it, you'll be paid up. But on your hand, and knowing about like any student that say that if we're not going to take the responsibility for paying a little bit, a portion at a time, the more likely they say that well, you need to get onto it. But on your hand, and knowing about like really that anybody say that well, like for who's boss, like for who's the boss. But on the other hand, knowing about like really that for like the whole purpose about being an adult too is like being a student, that we're like, well, how far we are willing to know about that we pay for money, and knowing about like are you willing to manage this? Are you willing to handle the money and then make the phone call, work out, negotiate a payment, that type of stuff. If you're willing to do that for about 39 months, we can guarantee that more likely that the job's going to be done, and then maybe not everything done, but then on your hand at knowing about, I'm like, really, is that something to look forward to or what? But on your hand at knowing about, it's like for the difference between grants and loans, like so I'll say color activity. It's like the difference between the grants and loans is basically grants are basically a type of a award, reward or earnings for if it's passing a class or if it's going to be like for you're doing well, that type of stuff. And like they mainly say that, I'm like, yeah, for depend on if it's any type of a if you're like which calls like depend on the plan as well, and then if you're full-time as well, full-time student, and then as well as with the loans, loans is basically that you'll borrowed, and then that money that's lended to you is like for a certain amount of time. But on your hand, that knowing about, I'm like, for a certain amount of time that for you're working out the payments from there. But basically, it's between borrow money and then award money, and then knowing about if we would actually work the math right here. Is that like so far as you take one thing at a time, and this is usually how I work my math right here, is to where if we're talking about up to $5,000, and let's just say on average if we start out with if we borrowed about $5,999 or so dollars, and then you take that and then multiply that times it's like for 20%. 20%, and then so altogether it's like if we would actually do the calculations. And then usually there would be like say a number right here, but let's just say on average that for times 20%, so altogether that would make about on average between $8,000 to $8,758 or so dollars and 49 cents. And then knowing about, I'm like, for really, for how much money that more likely that could be coming back, and just thinking about, I'm like, if we were to actually work the math, and knowing about, I'm like, yeah, those numbers seems to climb, much higher. It's like talk about, like, yeah, if we may have started out with maybe only $100, that we only started out with maybe $100 or maybe $1,000 down. Thinking about, really, how are we going to be able to make these numbers smaller? To where they're climbing up now, but then on average that I'm like, yeah, that and now that they are actually getting smaller. It's like knowing about we actually work the math, and then whenever we do work the math, is just thinking about, it's like exactly about for like the amount of money that we go out, and then they may say, yep, if you solve the math problem, keep the math problem in mind, and I'm sure that those numbers are going to start getting smaller. And then same with for following our taxes, that from the amount of money that was borrowed, and then from the amount of money that you made, and as well as working out for how much money that was coming in and out, which amount of money that's staying in there, that type of stuff. So in a lot of ways that knowing about, I'm like, yeah, for whichever amount of money that more likely that's being managed, though, is that knowing about, I'm like, really, the question could be, it's like, yeah, maybe 2 or 3 years, out of those tax times to where you see a little bit less coming back, but then this maybe the following year that you may start seeing a little bit more coming back. So in a lot of ways, if we were to actually work the math here, is that knowing about, I'm like, really, I don't know if anybody here has really calculated about whenever they file their taxes or whenever that they do the math and thinking about, I'm like, it just seems like that right now it's kind of like in a jeopardy to where that you're paying back student loans, and think about how much money that's coming in, and then how much money that's able to stay in, and how much money that needs to come out. But on the other hand, I guess you could say that, I'm like, really, one thing that we may look forward to knowing about, I'm like, really, for maybe from our experience to where how to figure out the math problem, because more likely they say that, yeah, really, and somebody else does it for us, maybe that more likely we won't know all the details, do we? But then, it seems like a total difference whenever somebody asks me, how'd you figure that math problem out? Such as, for like if it's going to be what you call for 5, and like we know it, I'm like, yeah, for 5 times 5, it'd be 25, and like think about, really, how did you figure that out, or something like that. So in a lot of ways, I kind of enjoy it to where that I'm like, yeah, people that may ask me, it's like, how did you figure out that math problem? And they're like, well, they like, don't tell us that you just add up the numbers, and I'm sure that there's there's a way that how you solved it, such as if there's a remainder, or if there was a number that more likely that was about maybe a third of a little bit bigger or smaller than the number that was on your second column or maybe the third column. But On the hand, if we were to actually work the math, though, is knowing about, like, really, for any type of math problem, if it's going to be for like 1 and maybe 0, and a lot of times you'll probably say, yeah, for 0 and 0, 0 times 0 is 0, 0 plus 0, 0 minus 0, 0, but on the other hand, that knowing about, like, really, that they say that after about maybe 39 months, you'll start seeing those digits to where that there's $0 owed, and there's there's 0 cents, and there's 0, let's say, points or something like that. But on the other hand, it knowing about, like, really, about that, knowing about for how well we are coming along to where that for managing for the responsibility, and knowing about for the counting, that knowing about, really, it's not really all that bad. I guess we just really gotta know and understand about how it works and what we're doing. Really just to be comfortable about knowing about, really, our own the ways of how we want to manage it, as long as we're doing it correctly, that type of stuff. But other than that type of see the difference between the grants and loans, like collective activity.